so day 2 of the kinship and marriage and family and gender lessons between now and spring break. Okay, so this is the kinship diagram that we were working from on Wednesday of last week when we last saw each other. So, and thank you for letting me copy it out of your notes because I forgot to take a picture of it. Okay, so we started with matrilineage. Now, just to do a quick review, of course, we are talking about kinship, so that, and in particular, the kind of relatedness that we're talking about when we say kinship is how are we related by blood or by marriage, okay? So those are the type relationships that you see in this kinship chart. You see relationships by bloodline and also relationships by marriage. Which of these relationships, which symbols signify marriage and which symbols signify relationship by blood?
Marriage is like the equal sign and blood is the line.
Exactly, yes. So marriage is the equal sign or sexual union because marriages don't exist in 100% of the cultures around the world. Most of them, 99% of the cultures, marriages exist, but maybe in a different format than we are familiar with. But yeah, so marriages exist in 99% of the cultures worldwide. So you can use this for a sexual union or a marriage, and then yes, the lines that link siblings, for instance, or offspring, this is a blood relationship, okay? So in a matrilineage, we are tracing bloodline through the mother's side of the family. Sound familiar? Here's a question for you. In a matrilineage, if you and I come from a society where matrilineages are the habit, are males and females ever related by blood, or only females related by blood? Okay, let me ask it again. In a bloodline, either a matrilineage or a patrilineage, where you just trace family membership and bloodline through one side of the family and one side only. A matrilineage is one of those unilineal descent systems. Remember this word from Wednesday? You should have it written in your notes someplace. It's a unilineal descent system. Unilineal means what? One line, right? When we're talking about matrilineage, which line is the one line?
Right.
The mother. Yes, the mother. Okay. So in a matrilineage, are only the women part of the bloodline, or can there be males in the bloodline also? There are males in the bloodline also. So that was a better way for me to ask that question, right? So that was the general question I was trying to ask. But yeah, that was a clearer way to ask that. Okay. So we're going to start with ego. I'm going to go ahead and point ego out to you because he is our square there. And I'm saying it's a he because we should remember that from last time. But what other clue on here tells us that it's a he? There is his spouse. His spouse is a female. And so ego is a he.
Well, would that be different in other cultures though? Like
yes, meaning are sometimes people of the same sex married to each other?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. It's kind of, in American politics today, we think of that as kind of a controversial topic for America, but worldwide, around the world for millennia, it's no big news. It's part of human behavior, acceptable human behavior around the world, forever. Yeah, so it's big news here, controversial kind of let's fight over it kind of idea here, but around the world it's happened forever. Sir?
So in something like that, if you were going to be reading the chart, not making it, how do you differentiate if the ego is a male or a female, if they're married to the same sex?
Oh, in that kind of special,
Yeah.
in that case, you would have the special notes. Like, in an ethnography, when you're drawing these kinship charts regarding ego, you're starting with ego and you're drawing these kinship charts. It's going to be clear in your written narrative part of your ethnography who and what ego is, right? So yeah, just one of these kinship charts, I'm throwing this kinship chart at you. This would never exist by itself in anthropology except for in a learning situation like this. Every other time that you see a kinship diagram like this, it will be in the context of a lot of written paragraphs and sentences explaining relationships of people, and this will just be used as kind of like a visual break. Yeah. Your hand was up?
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask, like, if it's two men, how would you separate it like that? If it's two women, would you use both sides of the family?
It would depend on whether you're in a unilineal descent system, and we'll get to that. We'll get to the gender issue because We'll get to that. Okay? There's a difference between sex and gender, and we don't know what it is yet, but we will learn it soon. Okay, so we want to review the matrilineage, right? So here we are. Now, we're starting with ego, and I want you to tell me who to color in. Remember, the proper way to do it for an anthropologist is not to use words like aunt and uncle. We don't use words like grandparents. We use words like ego's mother's something, right? And we might have ego's mother's third son or something. You know, I don't think there's one pictured, but you get what I mean, right? So what I want you to do is I want you to start with ego and tell me, using that terminology, those possessive nouns, who in this generation should be colored in red because they are part of ego's matrilineage.
Ego's mother's mother.
Ego's mother, ego's mother's sister, brother.
This generation.
Oh,
This one.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
maybe I
right,
slouched.
right.
Maybe I started going like this. But no, this generation, the generation on the top, who should be in there?
Ego's mother.
Ego's mother's mother. We got it? Okay, so ego's mother's mother. Okay, anybody else in that generation? No. Okay, so now tell me in this generation, who is part of ego's matrilineage?
All but the one that's married to the
You
triangle.
can't tell me that. You have to tell me in anthropologist words, which
The
is
mother-
ego's something, something,
Ego's
something.
mother and ego's mother's son.
Female siblings.
Okay.
well, and brother. We got ego's mother, sister, brother, sister, and sister.
Is he right? Ego's, okay, so Brian said ego's mother, ego's mother's sister, both of ego's mother's brothers, and both of ego's mother's youngest sisters.
Yes.
Sound good? Okay, so that's like this. And so Ian, did you say something about just the sisters or not the sisters?
Yeah, I thought it was just the sisters. 'cause it was
Remember, and a lot of people think that just because we're talking about a natural lineage, so that's why I've been trying to reinforce that we're related to males and females through a lineage. We might not inherit our lineage, we might not inherit our bloodline through the male side. We inherit it through the female side. But we're still related to males because females beget males, right? Okay. So, are we done with this generation, or do we have more circles and triangles to color in? We're done? Okay. We're done? Okay, that's what I need to read you. Okay. So, now ego's generation. Who in ego's generation should be colored in?
Ego's brother and two sisters.
Is that right? Ego's brother and two sisters. Why? Because they share a mother. They got their lineage from the mother. So, ego's brother and two sisters. Are we done?
No.
Are we?
Yes.
No, not ego's
Well, 'cause the
mother's
kids can't read.
sister's 4 children. Youngest sister's 4 children.
Okay, so are we done? Or should ego's mother's youngest sister's 4 offspring be colored in also?
She has colored
No, because he married
No,
his cousin by
yeah.
that time.
This should be the same exact.
Yeah,
this
because
should
I
be
got
the-
them colored
in.
in.
They're colored in.
But
This
that's
should be
not,
the same one. But even if they're not colored in, okay, so we used the same kinship thing. I drew an exact copy of the one that Bree had in her notes. So even if it's not, who is right? Are we done with this generation or why? So Reggie, I see your like frown on your face. Your inquisitive frown. So, okay, a matrilineage, you are related through your mother's bloodline. Okay, so regardless of what generation you're from, any of these 4 generations, you look to see whether females who are of the bloodline are having offspring. Do you see any other females besides ego's mother who are also part of ego's matrilineage who are having offspring?
the youngest brother.
The youngest sister.
There we go. So these 4 siblings are part of the matrilineage. Now tell me why these aren't.
Because
Male.
that's a male.
Because the
Ego's
person who's
mother's brother is. That
is
would
the
be a
one of the
patrilineage.
parents who is in the bloodline, and since it's a matrilineage, he does not pass his bloodline on to his offspring. What matrilineage do they belong to?
They're
This matrilineage, and we don't know. you know, what her family tree looks like, because she's not pictured here. All we know is they don't get colored in red because they come from a different matrilineage. Okay, so they're not blood relatives, in other words. These people aren't blood relatives. What are the words? On Wednesday I gave you 2 vocabulary words. One for blood relatives and one for marriage relatives. And what are those words?
Consanguine,
Consanguinal relatives are what?
or someone related to a person by bloodline.
By bloodline. And what's the other one?
A fiddle.
A fennel, and that's related by marriage, right? Okay, so these people are relatives, but they're only relatives by marriage, okay? This matrilineage is a relative of this matrilineage, but they're only related by marriage. They're not related by blood, because in this culture, it is not customary for bloodline to be derived from both sides like our culture is. Make sense? You with me? Okay. Are we done, or should other people be colored in to this matrilineage? Why aren't Ego's kids going to be colored in?
Because he's a male.
Because Ego does not pass his bloodline on in a matrilineage. He's a male, and the bloodline only comes from his wife's side of the family. So yeah, so we're done. We're good? Brain twister, right? Okay. So remember, now we're going to use the same picture for a patrilineage now, and do the same general experience, but let me just make sure I don't need to add a few more relationships that I want to talk about.
We already talked about the fact that they're cousins, right? That they got married.
We haven't talked about that yet,
Okay.
Well, we did last class period.
but I don't think we talked about the different types of cousins. Okay, so let's do that really quick before we move on. And actually, we need to talk about who's your daddy. Here's the key question.
Mari. Yeah.
Do what? Yeah, we need to. Yeah, we don't need to see Mari Povich in order to ask who's the daddy. No paternity test needs to be made here. But we do need to talk about the difference between the word pater and genitor, and we need to talk about the difference in the way we define cousins worldwide. Y'all with me over here? Pay attention. I don't see any notes being taken.
Sorry. I don't ever read my notes, so I've been taking notes.
Okay.
In my head.
All right, so let me not use the red one. Let me use the black one. Okay, so the 2 different things that we need to talk about is pater compared to genitor. And also, let's look at this term cousin and talk about the way we classify cousins worldwide, because our way of classifying cousins is not a universal way of classifying cousins. We need to look at the anthropological way because it's more universal than our way in the United States. So we do classify cousins, and who was it that asked? Oh, you were asking, aren't they cousins?
Yeah.
Okay. The answer is yes and no. They are a certain type of cousin where that kind of relationship is okay. All right?
That wouldn't be
So-
okay here, though, right?
Yeah, in some cases.
Well, not like making fun of Arkansas, but just
Yeah, no Arkansas jokes. Yeah, where's Max? Yeah, Max was making Arkansas jokes the other day. But okay, so let's look at the difference between a parallel cousin also and a cross cousin. Okay. So, for those of you who have already done your reading in chapter 9, there is a section in chapter 9 on incest. What does incest mean? Yes, okay, so we're going to start the sentence with ew from Monica. Do what?
Yes, that's in the family.
Exactly. So incest is defined in very general terms about inappropriate sexual relationships within family units, okay? Now, there is only, so in America, in our culture, we have an idea about what is appropriate as a sexual relationship within a family and what is not appropriate as a sexual relationship within a family or a bloodline, right? Okay, so that's why you asked the question to begin with, aren't those cousins? And some people would even ask me, I've had several people before, when I've drawn kinship diagrams on the board like this, say things like, did you make a mistake? Did you mean to do that? Do you see what those people are to each other and you've got them married? And then there'll be some kind of sound effect like you gave, ew, right? Yeah, so, all right, it's important for us to know that there seems to be, are y'all listening to me? there seems to be only one universal incest rule that exists in the world. Only one. And that one universal incest rule is a mother to a son. That's the only universal incest rule.
Would be
A
a
mother to a male offspring. Do what?
Would it be?
Well, exactly, yes, to go back to your Greek tragedies, Oedipus Rex. But anyway, yeah, but that was unknown, wasn't it? Didn't that story go that like they didn't
killed
know
him,
that
yeah.
what's his mother's name, Jocasta or something? They didn't know. She didn't know he was her son. But anyway, yes, good reference to bring in the literature reference. Anyway, so yeah, mother to son is pretty much a universal incest taboo, we call it. But every other relationship, yes, even a father to a daughter is an acceptable part of some cultures, some places. Maybe not in our culture, as a matter of fact, let me just say definitely not in our culture, right? But in other places around the world, yes, those kinds of relationships are maybe not the most common in the world, but they are approved of and accepted in some cases. The only one that's never accepted is mother to son, okay? So, if father to daughter is even accepted within the okay sexual relationships to have around the world in some places, then suddenly does this seem like a little bit better being cousins, since it's not like you're like, you know, I'm telling you that even father to daughter can be okay in some places. So this is like certainly much farther apart. Now, the differences in what you're talking about here, well, there's two differences. We need to talk about the concept of cousin, but we also first need to talk about the concept of father, okay? We already know this word, pater, because we used it as a root word last week when we talked about a patrilineage compared to a matrilineage. Pater means father, right? Does anybody know what this word means? Genitor. Genitor does not mean mother. Genitor is another word that means father, really. Literally it means originator, but we use this word in anthropology to mean father again. But I need to point out both of these two words might mean father, but they're a different kind of father. A pater is a socially recognized father. Socially recognized father, while a genitor is the person who sired the offspring. What does siring an offspring mean?
So this would be like,
You are,
The
yeah,
biological.
the biological father, sperm donor, yeah, and then what was your question?
I was gonna say, this would be like how I consider my adoptive dad my dad, and he's my pater, and then my biological.
Exactly. So genitor is the biological contributor to conception, the one who sired the child. Okay. So, yeah, give you a second to get that in your notes. Pater versus genitor, and yeah, the way Sloan described it, I like that. Yeah, so you are in a unique situation, not entirely unique, obviously. Lots of people are adopted, but because you shared that information with us, yes, you may or may not know who your genitor is, but you sure know who daddy is, right? You sure know who tossed the softball with you and drove you back and forth to whatever you were driven back and forth to, right? Gave you $20 for gas now and then. You probably wish he still did occasionally.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's what pater means. That's the difference. Who was there for you? Who picked you up on the playground and dusted you off when you got a strawberry on your knee? Who carpooled to your 3rd grade field trip to the zoo? Who did all of that stuff? That's your pater. Okay? Your genitor is who contributed the genetic material. Okay? You see gene. Oops. See the word gene in this word here? Who contributed the genetic material? That's your genitor.
I was gonna ask, like, what if they did both, like, basically?
Oh yes, in our culture, we combine the pater and the genitor, don't we? In our culture, the assumption is if you contributed the genetic material, then you're pater also. We have a name for somebody, a bad name for somebody, if they contributed the genetic material and they're not the pater. What do we call them? Deadbeats, right? Yeah, I mean, we have a bad name for it because in our culture, yes, we assume that these are going to be the same person. But in other cultures, particularly in matrilineages, well, actually, that's not, I shouldn't have said particularly, no. In other cultures, somebody, each individual on this picture is probably going to have multiple paters that they look to, okay? Clearly, because we have them drawn here, we can clearly identify the genitors in this picture. But just because you are a genitor in another culture does not mean that you're going to be a pater to the people you're a genitor to. You follow me? Okay, so let me take this green marker. I didn't check it. Let me make sure. Yeah. Okay, so the green marker works.
So would that kind of be like how, like, back in medieval times, like kings would sire sons, but they weren't officially their sons because they were with someone that wasn't the queen?
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes. But that's because that's a more complicated question that you're asking because typically royal families use matrilineages to trace bloodline. Why would that be? Sarah, I don't know if y'all heard it, but Sarah asked the question about like if a king sires a son with a mistress or something, right? We read those stories all the time in history. So if there's the King of England and he sires a son with a mistress, why is that son kind of, you know, disregarded or even the word bastard, which some of us use, some of us might know some. But you know, we use it as a bad word to talk about somebody's attitude or whether we like them or not. But this is a legal term. This is an accurate term that has to do with wedlock, producing children out of wedlock. And it's not so much that the king has sired a bastard, but the king has sired a child outside, typically a matrilineage. Okay? So, like for instance, the royal family in England traces bloodline through the mother's side of the family. Why would that be advantageous when you are from a royal family and bloodline succession is important? Why would matrilineage be the customary way to trace bloodline?
Because the queen's easier to trace the child, so the male can have kids outside.
Absolutely, yes. So for just the same reason that you're talking about, the king, maybe the king is from the same matrilineage, a distant kind of this kind of cousin, which we haven't gotten to yet. But if the king is having a baby with one of the queen's, you know, the queen's women or whatever, the courtesans, that's not in the same matrilineage, but you might not have been there when the queen conceived the child, but lots of people were there when the queen gave birth to the child. And if the queen is of the bloodline, then even if the genitor of that child is the stable boy or something, we at least know he or she, the child, has the mother's bloodline because we were there and we witnessed the baby being born. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
If they trace it through the mother's side, then why has there always been put more importance on having a son in keeping?
Okay. This is where we get to the pater and the genitor kind of thing. So remember on Wednesday we talked about how political authority, decision-making capacity, all these kinds of things are granted through your position within your kinship structure. Okay? So we have this long list of reasons why kinship is so important culturally. So political power, voice, ruling authority, all those kinds of things are traced through your matrilineage, but just because we trace bloodline through the mother's side does not mean that females have political power in this case. Not at all. There's a major difference between a pater and a genitor because the genitor is the biological father, that's an O. The genitor is the biological father, but the pater is typically going to be the one who rules. The pater is going to be the one who decides whether marriages can take place, who decides what role you're going to play in the family business, who decides how many children you're going to have, how many daughters he will allow to live or you know, of yours, for instance, he will decide all of these different kinds of things, role in the economic structure. So, what I want to do with my green marker is I want to talk about ego's genitor compared to his paters in this picture. I probably need 2 markers. Let's do the genitor as blue and the pater as green, okay? So there's my color code. Now, we see ego because he's represented by the square. Using possessive pronouns, saying ego. What other males are in ego's matrilineage?
Ego's mother's 2 brothers.
Ego's mother has 2 brothers, and they are in the matrilineage also. Correct. Okay, so, did you change it? Oh, it's going again? Okay, good. All right, so yes. So ego's genitor is circled in blue, and the males in ego's matrilineage are underlined in green. We've underlined them in green because any of these people, of course, ego is a male also, so I'll go ahead and do that. So ego is a male also. I'll go ahead and underline him. But in regard to ego, there are 3 likely candidates in this chart who would be considered ego's paters. Okay? Remember is what I should say. Remember, 2 huge differences here. Pater and genitor, they might both mean father, but pater means socially recognized father. So I'm going to circle the 3 individuals on this chart who would likely serve as a socially recognized father in some sort of way regarding ego.
Can I guess them?
Yes.
Older brother and his wife.
Exactly.
His mother.
Why are those the ones that I'm going to say?
Because those actually.
They're in his bloodline, but there's others in his bloodline too. Why wouldn't these
They're
people be
older
likely
than him.
paters? They're older. Okay? They're older than ego. But the way this picture looks, they're clearly older. Do what?
Is he younger?
Ego is younger than they are.
And on the, for the 2 triangles on the right side?
For the
For ego's, say it.
Ego's mother's sister's youngest children?
she didn't circle those.
Right, no, I know, but
You're talking about these 2?
Yeah.
Okay. These 2 are most likely, because of the way we have this pictured, younger than ego.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah,
That's what I
so
said.
actually, all 3 of these people probably look to the same paters that ego does.
Right.
Although ego, being older than these 2, might serve as a pater in some way to all 4 of these children. Okay? So males and females alike get a pater, or several. You know, in this country, sometimes we say, goodness, kids go without a father. Well, you know what? How many fathers can there be in a culture like this? You can have 17 paters, literally. 17, 18, 27, pick a number. You can have that many paters if there are that many males in your matrilineage older than you. Would you necessarily go to all those paters for the same $20 for gas or advice about your sex life or any of these, to throw the softball with you? No. You might go to these different paters for different things. But think of that, anything that you would go to a father for guidance in life, or a male figure for guidance in life, those are the kinds of services, so to speak, that a pater provides to those people Paters. I don't think that's a verb. I don't think that's a verb, but there we go. We're gonna make it a verb.
Kind of reminds me, like my niece has a deadbeat dad or whatever, where he's not involved in her life, but my brother, who would be her uncle, kind of took
Serves
over.
the pater role. There we go. See? Absolutely. Okay. Questions? Are you good, Brittany?
Yeah.
That was a good one. It's like questions. You went, Are we good? Okay. All right. So, now do you want to go to the parallel and the cross cousin?
Yes.
All right. So remember how I said that it's really important from an anthropological point of view to be able to say possessive nouns, right? Like ego's mother's youngest brother's son. Like literally, you need to be able to say a whole bunch of possessive nouns to talk about an individual. Okay. So a parallel cousin, the difference between a parallel cousin and a cross cousin, the definitions of these are going to involve a whole bunch of those possessive nouns. Okay, a parallel cousin is the offspring of a parent's opposite, parents singular, opposite, I'm getting this wrong all the time. The offspring of the parent's same-sex sibling. Okay? So Ego's mother's sister's kids are going to be Ego's parallel cousins. Ego's father's brother's kids, or children more appropriately, are going to be Ego's parallel cousins. A cross cousin, on the other hand, is the offspring of a parent's opposite sex sibling. It's important to note here that in a unilineal descent system, in unilineal descent, parallel cousins are considered to be part of your bloodline. Parallel cousins are considered to be part of your bloodline in unilineal descent systems.
Can you say that one more time?
The whole thing? Like
No,
where?
the unilineal
Okay,
descent.
so remember unilineal means one side of the family. We've already given the example of a matrilineage today, hopefully. I thought we would be on patrilineage by now, but today we'll do a patrilineage also. So in a parallel or in a unilineal descent system, whether you're tracing your bloodline through the mater side or the pater side, a parallel cousin is always going to be a member of your bloodline. Okay? So these people who are colored in red are Ego's parallel cousins.
Okay.
Why? Because they are Ego's mother's same-sex siblings' offspring. See there? Therefore, parallel cousins in general are seen as much more closely related to each other than cross cousins. You and me, we have the same word for these people and these people compared to Ego, who are, what word would we call both these people and these people?
First cousins.
First cousins. So that's how we say it in our culture. Not so worldwide, especially in a descent system like this. Ego has two different kinds of cousins pictured here. Parallel cousins who are seen as much more closely related to each other than first cousins even, like we would define it. And cross cousins. Cross cousins are the offspring of a parent's opposite sex sibling. Here's Ego. Ego's mother's brother's children are Ego's cross cousins. Ego's cross cousins are not considered to be part of the matrilineage, and therefore they are not related. The idea is that they are not genetically related to each other as closely as a parallel cousin, nor have they grown up together. Okay? So a cross cousin is not as closely related, not by blood anyway. They have an affinal relationship. What does affinal mean?
Related by marriage.
Related by marriage. They're not as closely related to each other. They have an affinal relationship, and therefore cross cousins are marriageable themselves. I don't know how you spell marriageable. Does that look right? Marriageable themselves.
So you're saying, since how the mother's different from the family, Okay, so the Ego's mother's brother got married outside of the family, so those kids are crossed because the mother's bloodline is different. So technically, they're
No,
not.
those are the cross cousins because it's Ego's mother's opposite sex sibling who sired him.
Yeah,
But
so-
what you said is true also, but that's not,
Not the way it's worded, but
yeah, what you said is true, but that's not getting at the basis of the definition of a cross cousin. Ego's mother's brother is in fact married into a different matrilineage here.
so what, that's what I'm saying, but the bloodline would be different because the mother's different. So that's why
Yes.
they're not really.
That's why they're
related.
not considered as related to each other. They're related by marriage only from a previous generation, and they're not bloodline relatives. And regardless of where you are in the world with all these incest taboos different from one place to the next, regardless of where you are, these people aren't blood relatives in this culture, wherever we are in the world. I don't think we picked a culture to say that this was, but these people are not considered blood relatives. So if any of y'all went, what was your noise, Monica? If any of y'all went, ew, with this relationship, there is no ew, because these folks aren't blood relatives. Like you and I would define them as blood relatives. And here's the point where if Max was here, there would be lots of Arkansas. Like we don't go to family reunions and meet, spouses or find a date at our family reunion. Okay. So are we good? Really?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Well, I'm going to erase. I might as well just erase the whole blasted thing.
Can I
So
take
we're
a
gonna do
picture
the
real quick?
patrilineage on it?
We're going to do the patrilineage of it. Yeah, go ahead and take, if anybody wants to take a picture of it, go ahead and take a picture of it if you want to. And do you want to zoom in on it, maybe, Macy, or something? I don't know. It's kind of.
I did.
You did? Okay.
None of this is making any sense to me at all.
I know, you're not alone, believe me. You're not alone. And that's why at the very beginning I read, this woman, sentence number 2 in the book, says it's painful to learn
Could you kind
about.
of put a key up there so we can understand what all the.
You have the key.
Okay.
If you were here on Wednesday of last week, you've got all these symbols, right? You've got all of the symbols. That is your key. So look back to see what your notes say about what the symbols mean, and you should be able to interpret all of this. Okay?
Okay.
I know you'll probably say this next week or something, but how far when we do this are we supposed to go? Like,
Oh, in the assignment that I'm going to give you,
Yeah.
like in your own family, I'm sure it's at least 3 generations. I don't think it's 4. I think it's 3 generations.
is this for?
Is this 4? Answer his question. How do you know it's 4?
There's 4 different lines.
Because every generation is represented on a different, level. So here's the first generation, here's another, and here's the 4th.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so y'all took the pictures of it, no questions?
Wait, I have one more question.
Okay.
The top people, is that 2 separate families there? Or is that?
Okay, good question. So let me look at this really quick. I'm gonna have to stand back here and look at this because sometimes okay, so when you say families, let's change the word that we use, and instead of saying family, let's say lineage. Okay? So lineage means like blood relatives. So let me look to see how many lineages are represented here. If this is a matrilineage, clearly Ego's matrilineage is represented here. But here's another matrilineage that we didn't color in. See that?
Right.
And then we don't know what matrilineage he came from, but he's from a different matrilineage because he's not colored in. And then here is Ego's mother's spouse's matrilineage. This person,
Right, and so right there.
this one, these, this woman, this, these. They see, right? Did I do it right? Okay, so Yes. So, how many do we say was over here? Oh, this guy has a match. So this guy comes from a matrilineage we don't know about. This one is part of a matrilineage. Here's another matrilineage we don't know about. Here's a matrilineage we colored in. What's this, number 5? This is the 5th matrilineage in this picture. Here's the 6th one we don't know about this matrilineage. We don't know about this matrilineage. And we know very little about this matrilineage or this one. How many is that? Was it 9? Did we go to 9? I forgot to count.
Well, but what I'm asking is, ego's mother's spouse.
Ego's mother's
The
spouse.
very top left, that's gonna be ego's mother's spouse's mom and dad. The
Yes.
top, and then the other one is ego's mom's mom and dad.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes. That's how you should interpret it.
Trying.
Does that make sense?
Yes, okay.
Okay. Now I definitely have to erase the whole thing because I've gone and like marked it all up. Okay. Which means, you know what? I'm just gonna draw a new one, a new whole thing. So we'll use for patrilineage. Okay. Golly. It's kind of rickety. Okay, so. Yeah, so I'll do it in black. So y'all give me a second. And so we need to do a patrilineage. We need to show pairs and numbers. Okay. Of course, these lines should be straight. Okay, I realize that they're not, but they should be as straight as you can. Yes. Okay, so let me see. I want ego to be a male again in this, okay? So ego was a male in the other one. Ego is going to be a male in this one also. So here's ego. Somebody turn your phone off. I hear it beeping. I know we have a lot of dead time right now with me drawing this, but keep up with this and do not be looking at your phone while my back is on you. Let's see. Okay, I think I got it. I think I have like all the relationships in there, and there's nobody business going on, I think. Let me see. Okay. I think it's right. It's confusing for me too, so I have to stand back and like look at it from far off, okay, to make sure I've got all the relationships in here that I want to highlight. Okay, so y'all tell me when you, for those of you who are copying it. Okay. I think I got everybody up there. Okay, so are we good? So this one is going to be a patrilineage. We're going to color in the people in the patrilineage or patrilineal descent. Remember, you can say it in either way. Well, yeah, patrilineal descent. Go ahead and write that word up here. Okay, so you see a lot of marriages, a lot of offspring up here. You see a lot of marriage relationships that maybe we just learned are not maybe part of the same kind of incest rule structure that maybe you and I are familiar with. So I think every relationship that I need up there is up there. Do you see anybody who is deceased?
Yes.
Tell me in possessive nouns who is deceased.
Egos, fathers,
second sisters, spouse.
Egos, fathers, second sister's spouse is deceased. That's right. I don't know if any of y'all saw me like just how easily I just killed him off. Did y'all notice that? Just like, phew, gone. Okay. But anyway, yeah. So egos, fathers, more specifically, egos, fathers, second sister. Did y'all say that? Second sister. Okay. All right. So, yeah, so patrilineage, what I want to do is go up 2 generations from ego, and using the possessive nouns like we talked about, I want you to tell me in relationship from ego, who in this generation up here should be colored in green.
and with the top.
The top generation that's pictured, start with ego, and tell me ego's something something.
Father.
Ego's father's father. Are we right? Ego's father's father. Okay. There's a whole bunch of people in this generation. Whole bunch of people in this generation. Anybody?
Those
Okay.
3 kids have 1 parent.
Oh yeah. Okay. We'll come to that. Did y'all hear Hannah's? I didn't realize that I did that, but yeah, I have like the opposite, which you can do, but you typically see it out of a female. Yeah, which you can do, but anyway, yeah. So she pointed, yes. Inadvertently, yeah. Didn't mean to confuse you, but yes, that you can draw that way sometimes when there's not either a sexual union or maybe these people were adopted or something, but not very often does adoption happen around the world. In our culture, yes. Okay. So yeah, we'll come to that one. Probably not today, but maybe next week.
It's like that.
Or on Wednesday. What'd you
It's like
say?
that Schwarzenegger movie where he gets pregnant.
Oh, what movie? Yeah, in like 1990 or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, back when y'all were zygotes. Okay, So anyway, yes. So ego's father's father is part of the patrilineage, but anybody else in ego's father's father generation, should anybody else be colored in?
No.
We right? Are they right? I've got 2 votes for no. Are they right?
No say.
No, no, say, yeah, wrong class. But anyway, yeah, they are correct. Ego's father's father is the only one on this generation who is clearly of this patrilineage. Okay, so good. These folks over here didn't throw you off. That was my sneaky trick people over here. Okay, so now let's go to this generation of ego's family. And starting with ego, tell me ego something something should be colored in.
Ego's father.
Ego's father.
Ego's 2 brothers. I mean, his father, 2 brothers.
Ego's father and ego's father's 2 brothers. So I see a brother here, and I see a brother here. And are we done?
Fathers, 1, 2, 3 sisters.
What about ego's father's sisters? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. So here is a sister, and here is a sister, and here is a sister. But not this one?
No.
Not this?
No.
Okay. Anybody else in ego's father's generation who needs to be colored in? Look at all those people over there. No? Okay. Okay, we're at ego's generation now. So who from ego's generation needs to be colored in?
Ego's 2 brothers and sisters.
Ego's siblings. Okay, here we go. And
Ego's father's youngest brother's son.
this is his this is ego's father's
No, you
youngest
don't have no
brother.
kids.
Oldest.
One, that's the
Oldest
isn't that the
brother.
oldest? The youngest would be all the way to the left.
The oldest typically starts over here and
Okay,
goes
then
younger
oldest
that way.
brother.
Okay, yeah. So the oldest typically starts over here and goes younger. Okay, so ego's father's oldest brother's son. Okay. Anybody else?
No, shit.
Okay. Now in the descending generation from ego,
All of them.
who?
Ego's father's oldest brothers, sons, children.
Okay, ego's father's oldest brothers,
Male
sons, offspring. Yep. Is she right? I mean, I said yeah. I started like coloring
The
them in.
male sons.
Okay.
Ego's brothers, children.
Ego's oldest brother's children. Are they right?
Yes, I do.
And your middle name is Humble. Okay. And then who else?
Ego's children.
Ego's offspring. Yes, ego's children. Okay, so lots of folks from the descending generation are in ego's patrilineage. Anybody else? Nobody else? Are you sure? Okay. Yeah. This ends up with a completely different looking picture, right? A completely different looking picture. The same similar relationships in both the matrilineal chart and this patrilineal chart that we looked at. But yeah, this is how we trace the bloodline here. This is ego, and you trace it through ego's father's side of the family. This is, in this case, this is clearly ego's genitor. And this guy might be ego's pater for certain things, but how many paters does ego have depicted in this picture, and who are they?
6. His 2 older brothers.
His 2 older brothers.
Cousin.
Yeah, his older
His,
cousin.
Oh, but don't use the word
Okay,
cousin.
yes.
Ego's
You have to use,
Father.
you have to say the
older
possessive.
son.
Ego's father's brothers and ego's father's oldest brother's son and ego's father's father.
You make me dizzy.
Yeah.
But yes, this kind of stuff does make you dizzy. Okay, so in blue, I'm going to circle the people. Well, first, let me do like red. We'll circle a person who is clearly ego's genitor. So ego clearly has one gender pictured, that's it, right? Now, in blue, we're going to highlight the people who can all, in one way or another, a pater for ego. So what you do in general is you look for males who are older than ego. Okay, so if we start over here at the left and go to the right for age is oldest on the left and youngest going toward the right, then we can start from Ego's father's father. Let's call him Big Daddy, right? Big Pater. He's the Big Pater. Then Ego's father's oldest brother. Here's another one, right? Ego's father's youngest brother. Here's another one. Ego's father also gets the circle for the Pater because he probably serves as a Pater in some kind of way to Ego, even though he's his genitor also. Ego's father's oldest brother's son is likely older than Ego and therefore probably serves as a Pater in some sort of function. And Ego's two older brothers probably in some kind of way serve as a Pater function for Ego.
Would that include like teaching Ego things?
Absolutely. Everything that we know a father does when we don't have the word deadbeat in front of the, in front of the word, everything that a father does is what a Pater does.
So even
Whether they sired you or not, whether they are your genitor or not. What do you say?
even the grandfather.
Especially the grandfather. But don't say grandfather, say Ego's father's father. Yes, especially the grandfather until this happens. When that happens, when he's deceased, he ceases to be Big Daddy, and who becomes Big Daddy now?
Ego's father.
His oldest.
In this picture, for the entire patrilineage, remember, we're talking about Ego's Paters. Ugh. We're talking about Ego's Paters. However, the Paters are not only Ego's Pater, but like the Pater to every single green person in this chart, right? So this Big Daddy was the Big Daddy for like every green person, okay? So when this person is deceased, who, in order of inheritance and succession, would likely inherit the Big Daddy function?
Ego's father's oldest brother.
Ego's father's oldest brother. Good. It was like y'all rehearsed it. You were ready for that question. Good. Yeah. So remember, we also said that bloodline or kinship patterns also relate to succession and inheritance. Sometimes we don't just inherit property, like you and I might think, oh, inheritance means we're inheriting a bank account or, something fun, right? Somebody's car or something. We usually think about some material object, right? But you also inherit social position, you inherit rank within the family, and so yes, when this person is deceased, then this person would likely take over. And the kinds of things this person would decide upon who is going to marry whom, who's going to do what in the family business, so to speak, who's going to be in charge of what, that kind of thing. So when we get to arranged marriages and we look at these two relationships with a parallel cousin and a cross cousin, this guy is very likely the guy who decided that this woman would marry this man so that they could sire these offspring. Make sense? This guy is probably the guy who decided that Ego would marry this woman and have these offspring. Now, what we'll talk about on Wednesday, and hopefully y'all have a lot of material to write a reaction paper about, but what we'll talk about on Wednesday is the way that marriage choices are made, because worldwide, and we'll also talk about how to draw marriages when a culture practices something called, look at me, right? Which somebody wrote, I don't know if it was this class or another class, when I was reading the reaction paper, somebody wrote about how surprised they were to find out that 75% of the world's cultures practice some form or another of polygamy, 75%. So again, we are odd man out, so to speak, America.
We're young.
Odd man out.
We're young.
What?
We're young compared to the other world.
That is true, but are you saying that that is directly in correlation to why we don't practice polygamy?
No, not exactly, but
Why would it be?
Close-minded people.